This is Goku-san, DBZ, and here's the newest comic book review. Street Fighter V, The Life and Death of Charlie Nash. Pretty cool cover, as we see. Issue number 1 by, of course, Capcom and their comic book division. Okay, so we start out here in the desert. And you hear something. Thump, 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 thump. It's a helicopter. Now, as you can obviously see. And here are a couple of individuals. Of course, we know. Well, if you've read any of the comic book stuff. These are two official representatives, of course, for the government, military, to rescue him. And he has many obvious questions, of course. And he mentions that his name is Charlie Nash, an American Marine and Air Force. And he says, I can't remember anything else. Wondering nothing but wondering. And of course they show him photos from his past. And of course they mention, let's start with when you joined the American Marine Corps at the age of 18, overperforming your requirement class in every measurable quality, both physical and mental. So saying he's obviously the top of the line, of course. And of course we recognize someone who trained him, that being obviously Guile, which is known for his sonic boom. And it shows like some things in the past where they're talking about things he went through. And speaking of sonic boom, and of course that ridiculous kick, which also Guile has, obviously. Of course, there looks like current stuff going on with Desert Storm, obviously. Kicking in, trying to invade. And speaking of Guile, and it says at the bottom, a man with whom you trained, a man who had grown to become your best friend, and the only one you felt was qualified for such a dangerous mission. And that was to, of course, infiltrate Shadowloo or Shadow Law. Double sonic boom. Boom. LOL. And he's, of course, as we see, 3 American Marines imprisoned in compound being used as Shadowloo or Shadow Law. Shadowloo test subjects. Boom. The mission was successful. And of course they're still talking. Lots and lots of talking. Well, that certainly doesn't look very good now, does it? The issue of Shadowloo clones was immediately made classified for fear of spreading paranoia and panic amongst the officials and the public at large. You were the only soldier granted security clearance. The government insisted on keeping you involved. So, as we see, of course, there's people that are being used as guinea pigs and stuff, as we see. And more discussions and more circles. Now, of course, one thing I will say is I like the artwork. It's a little different than the other comics so far done by Capcom, but I do like the art style. For the most part, still very loyal to the Japanese manga style of art / anime. And that's a good thing. I mean, for a fan myself of both comics and manga, I appreciate being loyal to the Japanese style of art. And of course, as we see here, he's breaking into Shadowloo. And he gets in, but things don't go well as expected. Yep, as we can see, alert, alert. At first, the mission was deemed a failure. Shadowloo's evacuation and destruction of the lab meant that the organization still somehow had insider information on the U.S. military plans. Worse still, mere days after the mission, Shadowloo, as though of the military's tracking satellites, developed some sort of cloaking technology, psycho power, energy, fingerprint. All leads were lost. The U.S. military was again in the dark. As we see here, he's still being briefed on things going on in the past. And he's trying to gather more information on Shadowloo. And he finds some information. Within weeks, your efforts eventually led to what you were told was a temporary Shadowloo outpost in Thailand. Little did you know that you had stumbled upon its central headquarters. Yeah, and speaking of, there we see Cammy. It was breeding human weapons. But you were too ambitious, Charlie, too alone, and so you'd suffer your first failed mission, and for the first time met face to face with the director behind the entire Shadowloo operation. And of course, we all know who that is. M. Bison. And there we see Borog, aka cheap knockoff of Mike Tyson, Sagat, and of course Vega. Or a wimpy version of Wolverine, basically. Just saying. But of course, as we see, they do many things. Shadowloo was mastering different applications of its psycho power. Bison and his engineers were able to force psycho power into your brain. Yep, there we have him in his evil yes. And program you into an automaton soldier to be used as their disposal. Da 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 da. Agent Shadow. As we can see here, he's going out for missions to assassinate people, obviously. Very fast and swift. Boom. And yeah, they're dead. needless to say. And he's having a hard time remembering things still. And now we have Chung-Li. Agent Chung-Yi. Whatever you want to say, Chung-Li, Chung-Yi. Her leads brought her to Japan, which is where you tracked her down. Probably the coolest, most awesome female fighter in any fine game ever. Not to mention, she was the first fully playable female fighter in fighting games ever. The very first. Which is very fascinating. She believed her father had been captured by Shadowloo, and so her pursuit of the organization had become relentless. Ooh, well, we recognize those kicks. That had to hurt. I'll try to speed this up a little. Yeah, this is pretty long. Of course, we have Guile. Well, that had to hurt. Of course, he's trying to get through to him. And finally does, and of course, as we see, running. And now get stopped. Get down. Charlie. For the ancient Greeks, death was not something to be feared but embraced. Death, they believed, would come when it was fated. Psycho Crusher, which is an awesome technique, as long as you're not on the receiving end, that is. Well, somebody doesn't look too happy. And he says, I'm every person you ever terrorized. Every person you ever hurt. Every person you ever killed. And it says, you and your damned psycho power are coming with me. And so he does a big sonic, well, not sonic boom, but the, of course, kick. Well, that's going to leave a mark. Of course, that's just one copy of Bison gone. Bison has multiple copies, of course, of himself. And they're trying to hold and keep him under control, as we see. I assure you, it is very possible. And they try to explain things. Is a leap of faith, and he says, a sign that you will put your trust in us. Well, she does. Anyways, and he ends up jumping down. A mind can only be controlled. If it agrees to be controlled. And of course there we see Mr. liking to wear his thong for some odd reason. And here's a quick little straight funnies. Number 3. And of course, Cammy and Chung-Li, or Chung-Yi, dressed up. Then we have something else here. Stupid Dan. Dan, the wimpy version of, or joke version of Ryu. Sorry this ended up so long, but I hope you enjoyed. And by the way, that's a character from the Darkstalker series. That was a comic book review of Street Fighter V, The Life and Death of Charlie Nash. Hope you enjoyed this. Please thumbs up this video. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Tell me what some of your favorite comics are. Street Fighter characters as well. Of course, follow me at twitter.com/GokuSunDBZ, as well as googleplus.com/GokuSunDBZ. And stay tuned for my next comic book review, Age of Apocalypse #1. So stay tuned for that. And remember, same YouTube time, same YouTube channel.